Namaste, everyone. Thank you for joining in this class on Kala Sarpa. And we have covered the first, the first part of the horoscope. We have covered till Rahu in the 7th house. Okay, we started with Rahu in the 1st house, and we have in the last class we covered the portion on Rahu in the 7th house and Ketu in the 1st house. Okay, so which means that we have reached almost 50% of the course. We have completed 50% of the course. So big congratulations for all of you to hold your ground. A lot of people joined in with a lot of enthusiasm, but then, as I always say, people drop out once they encounter that astrology is an ocean, right? People think that astrology is a pond, but then when they realize that astrology is an ocean, then they realize, they understand that we are too scared to swim in this ocean. All right. But then those are meant to learn will certainly learn no matter whatever comes. Okay. So today we'll be looking at Rahu in the 8th house. And again, for the axis, we take 2 classes. So we have, 5 more Rahu Ketu axis to cover. And after that, we will be dealing with perhaps the most important course that I'll ever teach, and it is titled as, overcoming the Rahu Ketu axis. Okay, so the Rahu Ketu axis is the most important problem that you need to solve, and it is the only problem that you need to solve in the horoscope. All right, you need to solve the Rahu Ketu axis. The rest of the planets can take care of themselves, except Rahu and Ketu, because they're the reason why you were born on this planet. Okay. So I'll have this course on solving the Rahu Ketu axis. And once we deal with this, then, if you decide to become a part of that course, you will be certified as astrologers who can heal the Rahu Ketu axis for people. And that's a great thing to do. Okay. It's a great skill to have if you can know how to heal the Rahu Ketu axis. And that's one of the greatest things that you can do for your clients. Okay, whether you do it for free or whether you do paid consultations, if you can help people to heal their Rahu Ketu axis, that is the biggest, that is the biggest benevolence that you can have. That is the biggest impact that you can have as students of Vedic astrology or as professional Vedic astrologers. Okay, so Kala Sarpa with Rahu in the 8th house, and we know that 8th house is the most horrible Dusthana, if you look at it. And as the principal Dusthana, the 8th house epitomizes the dosha principle. Okay. For example, the most virulent type of Mangal dosha is Mars in the 8th house, right? Mars in the 8th house is like a hidden atom bomb ready to trigger havoc in your life. And this is analogous to the Mangal Sutra, a necklace symbolizing the marriage, which is concealed in a sacred place. Its physical state reflecting the psychological state of the marriage. Okay, we have nowadays the Mangal Sutras. They are designed, in a very meticulous way, and all we have is gold. But in the earlier days, the Mangal Sutras had just 3 components: a small kind of a shell, and inside that shell there used to be a red coral. Okay, and that red coral is the significator of Mangala, right? Munga, which they call it in India. And then there was a black thread. Okay, there was a black thread, and that black thread was, that black thread signified that to control Mangal, you needed the effect of Shani in your lives. Okay, so that was the concept of the Mangal Sutra. But nowadays we have the Mangal Sutra all made in gold, which does not make much of a sense really. But then all the all the customs and traditions followed nowadays, they don't make much sense. They are just there for namesake. Okay, but if you want a real Mangal Sutra, yeah, they're also making Mangal Sutra bracelets as substitute these days. Yeah, so that is Kali Yuga. Okay, that is how so much degradation has happened with regards to Vedic knowledge. Okay, so Mangal Sutra, as I said, the concept is very, very simple, and it's actually, it'll cost you, if you get a Mangal Sutra made in the real way, in the Vedic way, it'll cost you only, say, 500 to 800 rupees, not more than that. Okay, but nowadays Mangal Sutras, they come in a, with a lot of price tags. Okay, just give me a second. I'm expecting a electrician. He is just calling me. Just give me a second. Okay, guys, really sorry. I'm at my Guruji's place, and this electrician, he was just calling me up. Anyways, so as I said, this placement of Rahu is very much analogous to the Mangal Sutra, which is, of course, a necklace symbolizing the marriage. Okay, and Rahu represents desire and obsession, right? And Ketu represents ambivalence and detachment. So with Rahu in the 8th and Ketu in the 2nd, it indicates a fair amount of bias for sex, okay, for transformative experiences of every kind, a fascination with the occult, okay, and sometimes these transformative experiences can come at the cost of one's family connections, financial affairs, education, and even proper diet. Okay, so you can have a transformative experience that may break you away from your education, or that can ruin you financially, or that can impact your health, for example. Okay, and Rahu in the 8th house is very troublesome. Okay, it is the most troublesome, it is the most troublesome position of Rahu to have. And what is the 8th house? It is the house of trauma and longevity. And the presence of Rahu can imply that unforeseen circumstances can destabilize your normal lifespan. Okay, the 8th house also rules sexual organs, and because of Rahu's presence, it can indicate some sort of abnormality, whether whether of color or dimensions or functionality. For example, say Rahu represents a snake, right? So if it is happening for a man, then maybe the man can have a crooked penis. Okay, and if it is for a woman, then the labia can be overdeveloped, like the hood of a cobra. Okay, I've seen this happening to people, right? I saw a case with Rahu in the 8th house for a male, and he said that I cannot have a sexual interaction with my wife because she finds my crooked penis very unattractive, or very troublesome, right? So these things do happen. Okay, and this is just an example. And Rahu in the 8th can also make you very susceptible to gout or rheumatism. Okay, so you need a lot of remedies to rectify this placement. Okay, to rectify this Rahu Ketu axis. And the native having Rahu in the 8th, he or she may embrace change with an enthusiasm that is unmatched amongst any of the native's acquaintances. Okay, and this is because the native perhaps recognizes that stasis is equated to death, and these natives, they simply want to push on through whatever barrier seems to block their progress. Okay, they'll try to overcome any kind of. Just a minute, someone is unmuted. Just hold on. Yeah. So these people, they may try to overcome their blockages in a very violent way. Okay, whether they have a physical blockage or emotional blockage or psychological or sexual or spiritual blockage, they may overcome. They may try to overcome in a very they may try to overcome the blockage in a very violent way. Okay, and the only respite that you have if you have this placement is if Ketu is placed with Saturn. Okay, if Saturn is joining this Ketu, right? If Saturn is joining this Ketu, then you can have a lot of free will, so as to say, to break out of your conditioning, to break out of your of your psychological barriers or physical barriers, whatever they may be. Okay, and ultimately the native is always seeking catharsis. Okay, which is the purification and purgation of emotions, particularly pity and fear. Okay, and what is the problem here? Okay, so these people, they seek purification and purgation of emotions, particularly pity and fear. Okay, through some form of art, or through some form of art or some form of life experience, or any extreme change in emotion that results in renewal and restoration. Okay, so Rahu in the 8th, it can indicate that a person is obsessed with acquiring special powers, right? whether it is the ability to perform magical tricks, or maybe be outstanding in bed, or maybe hypnotize someone, or maybe predict the future through the use of astrology. Okay, so it gives a lot of tendencies, right, in these aspects. And with Rahu in the 8th, the native always wants to experience transformation. And because, 8th house is the house of transformation, whether by free will or whether by fate, these people will always be drawn to situations where they might suffer accidents or, reversals or traumas that could change them physically, emotionally, psychologically, sexually, or spiritually. Okay. But then deep down, these natives, they know that life is a part of a universal cycle. And in order to be transformed, he or she must go through a process requiring death before rebirth, revolution before renaissance, and destruction before recycling. Okay. And the 8th house represents sudden events. So these transformations aren't planned, not at all. And, because, if they get planned, then they will not qualify as trauma. Okay, so change comes suddenly and unexpectedly. And, if you have this placement, I know Shannon has it, right? If you have this placement, you must be very, very, you must be very, very ready to change. Okay, you must be very, very active to accept change as a part of your life. Okay, as I said, having Ketu with Saturn helps immensely for the native to overcome the situation. But then, for that, you have to be really, really lucky. Okay. And the theme of rebirth may be very evident in the lives of these natives. Okay. And this includes a range of experiences, sometimes very traumatic. Sometimes these people can get successful passage to the other side, and then they can emerge in a new state. Okay, for example, psychotherapy or recovery from surgery, rescue from disaster, witness protection programs, etc. Now, some astrologers, they suggest past life regression as a remedy for this combination, but don't go for that, because that is something very, very abstract. Okay, don't go for past life regression unless and until it's absolutely necessary, unless and until nothing has worked for you. Okay, but still, as a result of whatever experiences you have because of the 8th house or because of Rahu in this 8th house, will always, those experiences will always lead to the emergence of a new person, of a new personality. Okay, and since the 8th house rules sex, Rahu here suggests an obsession with that sex. Okay, so such natives may be consumed by sexual thoughts, overly sexual thoughts rather, and they may weigh everyone they meet on a scale of sexual capacity, judging each on whether they might be an acceptable sexual partner. Okay, and these people, if at the age of during the teenage phase, they get easily aroused by sexual imagery, or they get haunted by sexual fantasies, and some of the most vivid dreams for these natives may revolve around the sexual playlist. Okay, so I'd seen a chart of an 18-year-old with Rahu in the in the 8th house, and this person was reportedly raped by his sister-in-law. Okay, it happened in India. Out of all things, it happened in India. And then as I asked, have you been traumatized? He said that I enjoyed the experience. And I said, oh my God, it can lead to a lot of psychological behavior which might not seem to be normal. Okay. Now, if Rahu forms connections, okay, by conjunction or by aspect with passion combos in the chart, maybe with Venus or with Mars, right? In that case, it will amplify or distort or even obsess upon these existing factors. Okay. Passive combinations typically involve connections between, Moon and Venus, or between Mars and Saturn. Okay. So Saturn also has a sexual side to it. Don't think that Saturn is that frail old man who cannot have, sex. Saturn has high libido. Saturn and people have very high libido. Okay. And since the 8th house rules both sex and, other people's money, there is an obvious link with prostitution. It is very obvious. Okay. But then, rather than getting actively engaged in, say, as a prostitute or as a gigolo, the native may only be involved on the periphery. That means, on the support side of a madam or a pimp, or on the control side as a police detective in the vice squad. Okay, right? So don't think that they can only be engaged as prostitutes. There are anti-prostitution wings of the police all over the world. So these people can be involved in there as well, because the eighth house also represents espionage. Okay, and Rahu is the karaka of espionage. Okay, and outside the field of commerce, other professional affiliations involving sex, like rape counselors or sex therapists or social workers or medical professionals who treat sexually transmitted diseases. Rahu and Eight can give these careers. Okay. Now, even in marriage, there may be financial inducement to maintain sexual relations. So what it means that one's motivation for sex and money are so interlinked that the native might use sex as both a lure and a bargaining chip to gain a marriage of substance. Okay. There was a very famous quote, okay, an anonymous quote. It is just as easy to fall in love with a rich man as a poor one. Okay. But then Rahu in the eighth is a door that swings both ways, since a man can also be a gigolo, or such a man can be a gigolo, or such a man can be someone who cultivates a relationship for money. Okay. And these natives, they may be attracted to socially risky or forbidden sexual relationships, for example, extramarital affairs or same-sex liaisons that could provoke scandal. Okay. And since the eighth house involves the partner's family, there can be an incestuous relationship with some member of the spouse's family. So this is what I meant. Okay. When I encountered that, he must be in his 20s. He said that I enjoyed getting, raped by my sister-in-law. So this was an incest kind of thing to happen. Okay. So the eighth house also rules trauma. It rules accidents, surgeries, right? It rules trauma of every kind. So Rahu in the eighth, it brings misfortunes. But then because Rahu is the great absorber that can absorb the influence of other planets, these people these planets can provide more information. Okay, for example, Saturn joining Rahu may imply a fall that results in broken bones. Okay, why broken bones? Because the sun represents bones, and Saturn being the primary enemy of the sun, it can break your bones. Okay, Mars rules surgery, so Rahu with Mars can imply a traumatic surgery. Okay, and then what about the good planets, right? So with Jupiter, it can indicate a near-death experience that results in a spiritual epiphany. Okay, so Rahu's association with house lords will also add some kind of nuance. Okay, for example, say if Rahu in the eighth is linked with the fifth lord, then misfortunes or traumatic situations can arrive within the context of pregnancy, for example, abortion or miscarriage, right? If Rahu is linked to the 12th lord, then the native may engage in sex tourism. Okay, and if he tries to violate the law, then he or she may end up in jail. Okay, so the native's karma obliges him or her to experience physical accident, dissection, fracture, injury, rape, surgery, and even torture. Okay, but then these situations can be emotionally very traumatic, right? It can lead to a lot of fear, guilt, heartbreak, and sorrow. And psychologically also, these situations can lead to anxiety or, PTSD, that means post-traumatic stress disorder, schizophrenia, or dissociative mental illness. Okay, so Rahu in the eighth is one of the primary combinations to be possessed by spirits or to be possessed by the supernatural. Okay, and then these natives, they can also experience unhappiness through the spouse, through scandal or trauma, or through premature death or suicide. And there may be an inordinate focus on other people's money, how to get other people's money. And you can get other people's money only through three ways, right? Through gambling, or through inheritance, or through good or bad financial legacies. Okay, so there's a lot of emphasis on these factors, right? Now these people, they are very careless of their own finances. Okay, And usually they are very, very much interested in the money of others, especially those of their spouse or business partners or in-laws, or people who play a very significant role in their lives. Okay. And this might as well suggest a person who marries for money, or maybe wants to, marry for money. And their involvement with other people's money may be very professional, like through banking or forensic accounting or insurance or investments or real estate management, lotteries, tax shelters, and so on. Okay, but this happens usually when Mercury joins this Rahu, or when this Rahu is involved with Mercury in any case. Okay. Now, less ethically, the 8th house also rules hidden assets or secret money. So, Rahu here suggests that the native could be involved in some kind of financial subterfuge of any kind. For example, bribes or extortion or hidden subsidies or lobbying or offshore bank accounts, secret slash funds, or having accounts in the Swiss bank, or tax evasion, and so on. Okay. Now, the 8th house also rules hidden things, and these people, they may be drawn to fields requiring discovery, investigation, problem solving, research, or unearthing of something buried. Okay, on unearthing of scams. And this could include fields which are as diverse as archaeology or criminal investigation, excavation, exhumation, forensics, psychotherapy, or even treasure hunting. Okay, so I met a 8th house Rahu female who was working in the post-mortem department of a hospital. And what she did, what she used to do, she had three other friends who were working in the same department, and every time some accident case came, they would just extract the heart of the dead person and fry it and have it with alcohol. Okay, so it gives a lot of tendencies which can be regarded as very sick under normal circumstances. Okay, every time a fresh case of accident would come, this lady would become very happy, because the human heart is the size of your fist. Okay, so they would extract the heart and then they would have it with alcohol later on in the night. Okay, in India we call it as chakna, right? Yeah, Shannon.
Yeah, I want. This is too much. I want to ask a question. I mean, does everything you just said, does it apply to everybody?
No, it will not apply to
Because I'm
everybody.
just wondering, like, I am not that person. What is happening?
No, it will not apply to everybody. I have to be as broad as possible, right? I have to be as broad as possible when I'm teaching. It will not apply to
Oh, this
everybody,
is
of
very,
course.
very disturbing. I don't like that.
Yeah. It is. It is. 8 hours Rahu is too much. It's too much.
Yeah,
Every time I see such a chart, I always keep in mind that I'll not ask many questions. Who knows what might come up?
I don't fancy that at all. I mean, the whole criminal investigation thing and digging stuff and the ghosts, yeah, but all these other things is like, what?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, in most cases, if Rahu has this influence of Jupiter, then the career roles may be very logical and legitimate. Okay, for example, criminal investigators or forensic accountants or psychotherapists or research scientists. But then these obsessions may lead these people travel, may lead these people down less travel paths. For example, conspiracy theorists or magicians or occultists or spies. Okay. Now, the 8th house also rules trauma. Okay, so the native may be professionally involved in catastrophes, right? For example, I know a person with Rahu in the 8th who was a reporter at accident scenes. Okay, there was this person who was, he was first reporting in accident scenes, and then he was supposed to, cover bomb blasts. Okay, and just imagine the trauma he had to go through to interview all those victims. Okay, these people can also work as trauma therapists, disaster relief workers, or even toxic spill technicians. Okay, and since the 8th house rules death, these people could also be involved in palliative counseling, grief management, or even mortuary work. For example, they could be working as undertakers or chandalas, that we have in the smashanas. Okay. Now, they could also be specialists in some kind of recovery and rehabilitation, like, via surgery or other medical treatment, or, they may be involved in criminal or financial investigation and reparations, forensic accounting, or tax loopholes, or psychological intervention for post-traumatic stress disorder. Okay, these people, they could have talents as a healer, for example, like a hypnotist or a highly skilled surgeon, psychotherapist, or even a shaman. Okay, but whatever they do, you can be you can be sure of one thing: these people will do something undercover, something that is hidden from the society. Okay, and in extreme cases they may experiment with camouflage and adopting different identities, right? This includes wearing Halloween costumes or participating in cosplay events, dressing for maybe role play, sexual encounters, or BDSM, whatever they call it, right? Or assuming a false identity for police undercover work or even espionage. Okay, so one of my teachers was doing an astrological counseling for a client from Denmark who had Rahu in the eighth, and he had painted his entire body green so that he could go and live in the jungles. Okay, this is what I meant by camouflage. In the extreme cases, this can happen. Okay. Yeah, I think Shannon has raised her hand again, or was your hand raised?
I didn't do it again.
Okay,
It just
I'll just
stayed
lower
there.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now the eighth house also rules occult, right? So, it rules not only the occult, it also rules mysteries of every kind. So, these natives are very fascinated with subjects that require investigation, research, and bringing to light something from the past. Okay, and occult obviously is the absence of obvious logic, the allure of magical influence, and the psychological power arising from its mastery. So the occult is very appealing for these natives, right? And as a result, they may become fascinated with secret societies, for example the Freemasons or the Illuminati or other occult fraternities. Okay, and they may be equally interested in the fields of science where some amount of discipline is required, right? But this mostly happens with Rahu in Aquarius. Okay, and they may be interested in subjects like quantum physics. Okay, and quantum physics usually boggles the minds of those who haven't acquainted themselves with the with the alternate realities that defy the conventions of traditional Newtonian physics, right? So these people can make very good researchers if Rahu is situated in Aquarius. Okay, so that's it for Rahu in the eighth. I did not want to make it too extreme for everyone's liking. In the next class, we'll be looking at Ketu in the second house. Okay, if you have questions, we can take them. What if in Pisces? Well, it can give you fascination with the other world. Okay, because Pisces represents your passing away. So it can give you fascination with spirits. It can give you fascination with having an out of body experience. It can give you fascination with something called astral travel. Okay, so that's how it works.
Guruji, my lord. Thank you.
Yeah, but you're undergoing training in Tantra, so you'll make it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, then. All right. So I don't think we have any questions. Thank you so much for joining in. I'll see you tomorrow for the Jyotish Foundation class at 8 o'clock. Namaste. Om Gurave Namaha.